Should accountants be scared of AI, and is it coming for them and their job?
Here is how an accountant can actually use this development and use this in your practice.
What question should an accountant be asking a vendor?
One of the questions I always ask is, what if AI reaches its limit?
So let's talk about like the security and ethics side, right?
Using a paid for version is essential.
What is the one piece of advice you would give accountants to cut through the overwhelming noise that is AI?
The problem a lot of people are going to have is
this episode, how to actually use AI at work. In this episode, I'm joined by Billie Mcloughlin, a qualified accountant and tech and AI lead at 2020 Innovation. Billie shares practical advice on how accountants can embrace AI confidently, explaining why it's not here just to take your job, but in fact to transform the profession. Plus, she offers actionable tips on simple AI tools you can start using today to work smarter, not harder. Billie, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here and great to talk to you about the always exciting and interesting topic of artificial intelligence. So let's jump straight in. I guess the first question I want to ask is, and I guess probably the question that's on everyone's mind, should accountants be scared of AI, and is it coming for them and their jobs?
petrified, down tools now. No, it really upsets me to read this in the media all the time, because I feel like what it's coming for is the future of the profession, in terms of the fact that if I was 17 again, deciding what I wanted to do as a career, if I was reading that by the time I qualified, there would be no job for me, I'd probably decide to maybe go into a different industry. So the most concerning part is actually the future of the profession, in terms of the fact of the people that are coming in, and we want to try and encourage them to still want to be an accountant. It's still a great industry to be in. If anything, artificial intelligence makes it more exciting because it means we can diversify what we do for our clients. So it's coming for the future in a sense, but not in the way that we think it is. There's a huge amount of opportunity. Everybody's heard this saying now of, it's not coming for your job, it's the people that don't use artificial intelligence that'll get replaced by it. And I do think that is true to a sense. I think we need to make sure that we're aware of it, we understand the opportunities, and we do grasp them where they're readily available, especially if our clients are using it. We're seeing this day to day with it being in mobile phones now. Our clients will be using it in their businesses. But I think people need to not underestimate how much it will be expected from their point of view, that we're using it as well as an industry.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Do you think there's a risk that there will be two tiers of accountancy firm, or two tiers of people in accountancy firm? Those that embrace AI and those that don't. Much like, I guess, in a way, there was at the start of the cloud journey, right?
Yeah, and to be honest, I think the cloud journey even now, because maybe not necessarily two tiers, but definitely staggered, because even now I speak to practitioners that are maybe acquiring a firm and they're still adding up on spreadsheets. I had one, this was a few years back now, but not too long, maybe only about 5 years ago, and they was acquiring a practice, and the team there were putting information on a spreadsheet and then adding it up with a calculator, and it blows your mind that you wouldn't even think that exists. So it's amazing to think that actually it's not two tiers. There is a huge amount of difference between the most technologically advanced and the least technologically advanced. So it's definitely a huge gap, and I do think what it will do is it will just drive a bigger wedge between those firms. And something I do say a lot to people is to get your ducks in a row, in a sense of not just assuming AI can revolutionize everything. You have to get the basics in order. So if you're not already using things like cloud software, you're not going to get the benefit of using artificial intelligence.
I wept a little bit when you said about someone using Excel and then using a calculator. It's like it's even the fact you can do that on Excel, but B, the fact they're still using Excel. A little tear came to the corner of my eye there. So I guess if it's not going to replace their jobs and it's not going to replace them, it is still quite overwhelming, right? It's quite a scary thing, AI. AI has gone from being nowhere to everywhere, and I guess that is quite overwhelming. So practically, with the firms that you talk to on a daily basis, and from your experience, where's a good place that an accountant can get started with AI? Where's the entry point that they can kind of grow from?
Yeah, I just to go back to what you said, 100% about the overwhelm, because it's kind of just been launched into our laps as here's AI and you must use it. And in any other walk of life, whether it's personally, professionally, if somebody just threw something at you and said, you need to use this or you're going to get left behind, and you didn't even know what it was, you're going to be more reluctant to use it, because it's become, I feel like AI has now become a bit of a subjective term, because you could get a room of 10 accountants and ask them what AI is, and every single one of them would come up with a different answer. A bit like AI would. If you asked it 10 times, it would probably come up with 10 different answers. So there is this aspect of actually understanding what it is first. But that's not that important. There is also this element of understanding how it can help you. So when I'm speaking to practitioners, they say, okay, I want to start using AI in my audit department. And I'm like, okay, but what for? Because it's not just a case of you want to use AI, you need to know what benefit you want to achieve from it. So if you haven't started in AI whatsoever and you don't really understand it and you want to kind of reap a bit of a reward and feel the benefits, the best place I feel to start would be to use AI note takers. So we're seeing a lot of people use this now. I jump on calls probably more often than not where we're joined by an AI note taker. And for those that are not aware, this is essentially just a robot that will join the meeting alongside you, and it acts as a virtual assistant where it will take notes for you. I use one called Fireflies, and the reason I use this one is because not only does it do a transcript, so I can sort of take sound bites from it, I can search in the transcript. So when I'm back in practice, I have a meeting with a client, they're a farmer, and they tell me that they've bought a new tractor. And I go back to the office and I think, oh, I'm racking my brains and I'm thinking, I can't remember when they said they bought it, whether they said it was new or secondhand, how much they said it cost. Well, it's really simple in an AI note taker to just search the word tractor and it will find any times in that conversation you've said that. So it's really easy to reflect. And also when it comes to sort of team encouragement, there's a lot of times where the partner would be the one to go meet that client and come back and either try and tell you what the conversation was about or write hieroglyphics. I'm sure many people relate to this. The partner's notes were always in hieroglyphics, and we'd have such a laugh in the office trying to decipher what he was actually saying. When you're actually trying to do that, it actually widens that bottleneck of relaying that information from the partner meeting with the client down to the client manager who's doing the work. There's other great use cases, it can send the transcript to everybody in the meeting. It can give you an idea of whether it's a positive or negative connotation. It can give you a summary of action points, a summary of questions that was asked. There's loads of benefits of these. And the reason why I say to start here is because those benefits are really quickly achieved. And then from that, your team then get that excitement of using AI and say, oh, actually, that's really benefited me in this way. How else can I use this? What other opportunities are there out there? So it's great for team engagement as well.
Yeah, I love that, and I mean we joke. I always joke that sometimes more AI note takers join the call in Silverfin than actually people, because obviously it'll still join it if you don't. So so sometimes you have like 4 or 5 note takers and 3 people, and you're like, oh, that's weird. But they're really good. I agree. They're really good introduction tools, and like we use a specific piece of AI here called Gong, and Gong will even craft follow-up emails based on the action points and the notes that are discussed in the call. And again, I'm not overly a fan of AI crafted communication because I think it takes away that personality. But it's a great place if you're not comfortable doing that, or you're a junior in the office and you're not that comfortable in crafting that. It's a great jumping off point to start with, right? It gets you comfortable and gets you started.
Yeah, and I quite often say as well, using these like as a starting point. It doesn't have to be your end point. So if go and craft that email for you, fantastic. Use that as your starting point, and then add the personality, then add the human element.
I'll tell you another great use I've found recently. So I've started some volunteering projects outside of Silverfin, which is super exciting, but it means I'm taking a lot of notes. And my note, I mean, I'd love to put mine against your partner's and see which ones are worse. So what I decided to do was scan my notes in on ChatGPT and get ChatGPT to transcribe them for me, and so I could then put them into a Google Doc, so I can kind of have a much clearer kind of revision tool. And it works brilliantly. It's so good at transcribing even the worst handwriting, and I would probably boldly say 98% of the time it's accurate. And I'm not accurate 98% of the time.
Yeah, so, I mean, I use a remarkable tablet to take my notes. It's really great, and it goes into Word and things, but it almost kind of eradicates the use case for that, because as you say, now you can upload a photograph of your paper notes and pop them in there. And then, as I say, if you're using something like ChatGPT and you've got the menu of conversations you're having on the left-hand side, you can create one specific tab for those notes, for that revision topic or whatever it may be, or that client industry. And then you've always got that information on hand in one place, and then you can ask questions on it as well, which is great. Rather than looking through all your notes, you've got that that aspect of asking the questions.
Yeah, I think my ultimate plan is to put all of my notes into its own GPT and then use it as a search tool. I think that's what I'm going to try and do. But that might be a little step too far for where we are on the podcast today. So look, let's take note takers as a good starting point, right? Great tool, can have a real good impact within the practice. But I use Gong. I think you use Fireflies.
Yeah.
Yep. And then there's like a few others, or many others as well. So in terms of kind of going through that process, what hints and tips would you give to an accountant looking to find the right tool? Should they try everything, or should they be like laser focused and just go on recommendation?
Yeah, so don't try every tool. There's now millions and millions of them out there. And also, this might be a little bit unfair today and maybe a little bit controversial, but there are a lot of apps and software that are claiming to have AI because they know it's a buzzword. Like if you go onto the website, there's so many apps and software vendors now, the first page will say AI because they know it's eye-catching, even if
it's replaced clouds, right?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, and even if the people don't understand what it means or why AI is being said, it's like, well, it's got to have AI. And again, like I have these conversations still with people now where they say, oh, I want a certain tool, it's got to be on the cloud, and I'm saying, but why? If you don't know why you want something to do it, then you're just kind of following the trend for oblivious reasons. But yeah, so not trying everything, but crowdsourcing information is by far the best way to do it. So staying informed but not consumed is such a big tip in this world, because there's a lot out there. So if you can tune into a few people, so the Digitals podcast is a great one. I watch Jason Stats quite a lot on YouTube. I personally have a membership called Tech Talk for members so that they can just once a quarter stay up to date with those changes. Rather than you having to, as a practitioner, you do not have time to do the research on all of these products. So rather than you trying to do that, tuning into these ones, having a listen, and if there is one that sparks your fancy, then go and do the research on that. Another thing that I've seen working really well is one of our members has a monthly lunch and learn. So within their team, what they do is they say, right, okay, the tax department want you to look at this, or the audit department want you to look at that. And then once a month they get together, and it can either be around new software or it can be new features in existing software. And they say, right, how have you used that this month? What have you found has been really beneficial? And that works with current technology as well as artificial intelligence. So that, sharing those use cases and crowdsourcing that information works really well.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about the podcasts and articles that, like Accounting Web, for example, are really good at breaking down some of those tools and some of those things that are out there that people can use. And absolutely listen to other accountants, right? Like we all know that that there are hundreds of Facebook, LinkedIn, and other groups and WhatsApp groups with other colleagues, and I'm in a couple. I've infiltrated a couple of accountant groups, and every so often I see something go in there and go, oh, we want to solve this problem. What tool's good? And I'll just kind of pop in and go, hey, look, we use this because we find it's X, Y, and Z. We'll talk a little bit about ethics and security later, because I actually think that's probably one of the bigger concerns that people have. You mentioned that every app, every bit of software is putting AI on their website. And I think it's a fair point, right? Because I think you're absolutely right. What question should an accountant be asking a vendor around AI when it comes to looking at their products, so they don't just get kind of sucked in on the hype of AI, which turns out to be yet another chat GPT LLM, right?
Yeah, so with AI, I think what people do is they kind of lead with the wrong part of it. So they lead with the AI and how that can help. Whereas actually what they need to start is, okay, as a practice, what is our problem and how can this product or software solve that problem? And it's kind of irrelevant whether it's artificial intelligence or general intelligence or just RPA, robot process automation, anything like that. It kind of doesn't really matter as long as that solution gets solved. So the questions really should be around what problems you have and how that software can solve them. And if they're using artificial intelligence, then I guess the questions would be, how is that different to just using a software? And how can we get the most out of that? Because the other issue we have with AI, whether it's inbuilt into software or whether you're using a standalone product, is, do we know how to use it properly? So whether you're using ChatGPT or you're going to be using a Copilot built within a bookkeeping tool, the problem a lot of people are going to have is, again, this thing's been placed in our laps, but where's the education around it? Who actually knows how to ask the right question? What we need to do is make sure that our team are trained in asking the right questions, making sure that they can use artificial intelligence properly, and also recognize if AI is producing something incorrect. So one of the questions I always ask a tool when they say they've got AI is, what if AI reaches its limit? So if I asked your tool a question and it didn't know the answer, what would happen? Because quite often in standalone products like ChatGPT, it might hallucinate, which essentially means make up the answer. Well, we don't want that from a tool where we will be relying on that answer to give to a client. We want the product to say, my capabilities end here, I don't have an answer. So I think that's probably one of the biggest questions, but try not to lead with the AI and just lead with the solution to the problem that you've got.
And actually, I think that's great advice across the board for any form of technology, right? Like I always say that you shouldn't get sucked in by the great coffee cup or notebook at the event. Just make sure that when you're looking at a bit of software, it's solving a specific problem you have. And I guess that leads me to another question. You work with a lot of firms. You've been in practice yourself. What do you think some of the key areas that you see where firms could save time or maybe drive efficiencies with AI? What do you think that the kind of impact could be in an ideal situation?
Yeah, so this is why I set up Friday AI, because I feel like everybody talks about AI and how it's going to change your life and it's going to revolutionize everything. But actually, nobody talks about this is how it does it. So this development has come out by Microsoft. Here is how an accountant can actually use this development and use this in your practice. So I do think people, again, need to not get wrapped up in this world of how it can change everything. And just take it a step at a time. So some of the best use cases, and I've done a few demonstrations of this in presentations I've done in the past. So I did one where I went through a bit of the client journey and said, right, here's how you can use it in each stage. So from, let's say, marketing and awareness to try and attract those new clients, you could take frequently asked questions from a note taker or ones within your practice and throw them into something like ChatGPT to make it nice and neat, and then say, these are questions I get asked. Could you try and help me attract more beekeeping clients that I need for my practice, or I want more clients that are using this specific software. How can I attract them? Could you help me come up with a marketing plan? Again, as accountants, we are not marketeers. And so there's loads of use cases in terms of marketing, helping with blogs, for example, for websites, maybe social media posts. Again, make sure you do have that human element. And then from that, when it comes to onboarding clients, something that I'm doing at the moment is I have created an artificial intelligence avatar. So an AI avatar of myself, which I can then just feed a script that every time I onboarded a new client as a practitioner, I can give it the exact same script, but change the client name. So that client feels like they're getting that personalized video from me that says, "Hi, ABC Limited, it's great to work with you. This is how we work. This is your client manager's going to be." And we don't have to sit there in a studio recording that every time. We just feed a new script. It takes 10 seconds. So there's some great use cases for sort of the onboarding aspect. And there's also some fantastic statistics around video content as well. So how many hours of YouTube are watched every day, how many videos are uploaded to TikTok. Our clients are now getting used to consuming information through video. Bookkeeping, again, some really great use cases. We've seen this a lot in software, so being able to ask the software questions. We've seen some of the major bookkeeping tools now introduce these in as like internal chatbots. And with regards to asking questions, so for trainees as well, using ChatGPT and saying, really great for spreadsheets, I would like to create a formula. So I remember when I was in practice and I would try and create a formula on a spreadsheet and I'd say, I just want it to X, Y, and Z. Well, now we can go into a tool like ChatGPT and literally say that. I just want a formula that is going to make a pie chart of all this data and highlight anything that's over £1,000, and it will create the formula like that for you. Similarly, you can ask it, could you do me a double entry journal for a certain posting that I need to do? Then when you move on to the compliance side, something that I would say to be careful of, but using it to explain tax queries. So feeding it with a link to a HMRC legislation and asking it to reinterpret that into layman's terms, whether that be for a junior member of the team or a client. You could even ask it to explain it in layman's terms to a certain industry. So maybe a plumber might want it to be explained to them a little bit different to a manufacturer. And then finally, when you move on to the advisory side of things, and again, this is just kind of my client journey of onboarding through to advisory, using it to do kind of like what if scenarios. So saying, here is an anonymized P&L, January to March. What would happen if turnover went up 10% and team costs went up 20%, for example? So there's a lot of use cases, and this is all probably just if you could do this just with ChatGPT or some of the tools that I've got them integrated in.
Oh, I love that. So many great tips there. My wife uses it for she does the occasional bit of website HTML coding. So she'll get it to write the code for her. So she can just, I just sit there and just go, if I had this 20 years ago when I was building websites, like it would have been an absolute game changer. Clearly, I and sadly I didn't. So look, let's just. I don't want to brush past it, but I also don't want to put too much of a downer on things. So let's talk about like the security and ethics side, right? Like it's a big concern for people. Are people too concerned about the security and ethics around AI, or are they right to be concerned? And what can they do to make sure that they're being as safe as they can be?
Yeah, I mean, they've got a right to be concerned. As accountants, ethics, security is built into it, it's part of our studies. So I understand that. I used to, when I very first started talking about AI a couple of years ago, used to kind of brush over this. I'd be like, nobody's interested. It's boring, that part. But every time I got to the end of a session, it would always be the questions would be like, what is the ethical implications? And what's interesting is if we look at how much we use Google now and how much data that has on us, people have kind of just accepted it. And I think AI will kind of go down that route, if I'm honest. But there is this concern, and people like Elon Musk maybe don't have the most greatest reputation in terms of how trustworthy they are. So there is some concerns. I wouldn't be putting my bank details into ChatGPT, even if I felt like it was safe. And when you're using the likes of something like that, it does claim to redact information that should be anonymized. So if you accidentally put in a national insurance number, it says it will redact that when it's training the model. Again, I still wouldn't trust it. A few tips that I would say to kind of look at. If you're using a product with AI built in, so say for example you chose a bookkeeping product and they've started to incorporate AI, or you're using Microsoft and obviously they've now got their Copilot, do be mindful that it's meeting the same security requirements. If you're already happy to put all that data within a document within Microsoft, the AI element is just as secure because they have to meet the same security requirements. When it comes to using a standalone product, and again, I always use ChatGPT because it is kind of like the well-known product, using a paid-for version is essential because if you're not paying for an AI product, that means that you are the product. Like it's learning from you, it's taking your data. So using a paid-for product because the security is much better. Using Teams on Microsoft ChatGPT is a great idea because it's got enterprise-level security. For those of you that don't know, Microsoft have got a pretty big shareholding with OpenAI, so they use a lot of the same security as Microsoft. And also there is the option that when you're using a version like that, you can go into the settings and there's a little toggle where you can say, please do not learn from my data. So at that point, it will stop taking your data and put it elsewhere. And then my final point here is to have an AI policy. So as accountants, again, not something we got into the industry for. We didn't think all those years ago when we were studying that we would have to consider something like this, but unfortunately, it's the reality. So having an AI policy, and this is something that we've created for our members at 2020 because we understand the importance of it, to try and encourage your team to use it, but use it sensibly and safely. So they understand what data can be put into it and what data cannot be put into it. What is the difference between sensitive data, highly sensitive data, and not sensitive data? And also how to anonymize it if you are going to use these tools. And then we kind of break it down between standalone products and products that have it built in. So Carbon, for example, has AI built in, but if you're going to go and find a product like ChatGPT, there's completely different use cases. So having an AI policy within your practice means that your team will feel confident using it. Also, to understand that you don't want them spending 3 hours on a task they could do in 5 minutes because they've gone down this AI rabbit hole of trialing it all. So having that confidence that your team are using it and they know that they're allowed to is also a great way to ensure you've got that future development in the practice as well, but nice and safe.
I love that. I think some really good practical tips there. So my last one very quick question before I hit the last question. What's your favorite AI tool, Billie? What's the one that you could not do without right now?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think it would have to be ChatGPT would be up there, but I think Microsoft, if they keep developing the way they are, I think Copilot, because all of my information is essentially already in Microsoft. What I always say to people is it's mental that we can go online and find more about a rare frog in the Amazon rainforest than we could about our own business. The thought that we can go into something like Microsoft and Dropbox are creating a great version as well and ask questions on our own data and get that information back instantly, it just feels like that's where we should be at. So at the minute it is ChatGPT because it's kind of the one that I've been brought into the AI world on. But there are some great ones coming through the market as well.
Amazing. So last question then. What is the one piece of advice you would give accountants to cut through the overwhelming noise that is AI?
I guess I think I've already said this, but to stay informed but not consumed. So to make sure that we're not getting overwhelmed and we're not spending time on AI unnecessarily. Make sure you're staying informed, but don't get consumed by it, and make sure it's always relevant. So when you're looking at something, always have in the back of the mind the problem that you're trying to solve. Don't try and run into something and think, right, okay, is there a really great thing about a hammer finding a nail? Just don't do that. Don't be the hammer finding the nail. Make sure that you've got a use case for it before you run with it, and don't think that you need it to solve everything because at the moment we're not at that stage. But please don't be frightened. Your clients are expecting this. Your team are expecting this. And it's really important that we embrace it, because unfortunately there will be a time where we might get left behind. And I don't want to say one of those cliche things, but that's probably going to have to be my last point.
You've been listening to the Silver Linings podcast, which was written and produced by me, Phil Hopton, and Lara Bolsonaro. The podcast is edited by Lee Stallard and Nomad Video. If you'd like to find out more about Silverfin, you can visit us at silverfin.co.uk or check us out on LinkedIn.